This is the second part of the story of the haunted house on Maple Street. If you haven't seen the first part, then watch it first and I will continue with the second part. The Haunted House on Maple Street Part 2, continued. She shivered, and walked away, knowing that the ghosts would always be a part of her life, even if they were no longer haunting her. For weeks after that night, Jessica felt like she was being followed. She would hear whispers in her ear when no one was around, and the feeling of being watched never left her. One night, as she was walking home from work, she felt a cold hand close around her wrist. She looked up and saw a woman standing in front of her. The woman was pale, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to glow in the moonlight. "Who are you?" Jessica asked, trying to pull away. "I am the one you released," the woman said. "The one you thought you could destroy." Jessica felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you want from me?" The woman leaned in close. "I want you to suffer. I want you to feel the pain that we felt when we were trapped in that house." And with that, the woman vanished into thin air. Jessica ran the rest of the way home, her heart pounding. She knew then that the ghosts were not at peace, and that they would never let her go. She tried to seek help from various sources, but no one believed her story. She was told that it was just her imagination, that she needed to seek help from a therapist. But Jessica knew that she wasn't crazy. She knew that the ghosts were real, and that they were out for revenge. One night, as she was sitting alone in her apartment, she heard a knock on the door. She looked through the peephole and saw a man standing outside. He was tall and thin, with a fedora pulled down over his eyes. "Who are you?" Jessica asked. The man didn't answer. He simply pushed his way into her apartment, and locked the door behind him. Jessica tried to run, but the man was too fast. He caught her by the arm, and whispered in her ear, "I know what you did. I know what you unleashed." Jessica felt tears streaming down her face. "Please, let me go." But the man was relentless. He dragged her into the living room, and pulled out a knife. Jessica screamed, but no one could hear her. She knew then that this was it. She was going to die, alone and afraid. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, she remembered the words she had spoken in the haunted house on Maple Street. She raised her hand, and spoke the words again. The man screamed, and then vanished in a burst of light. Jessica collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. She knew then that the curse had finally been lifted, and that she was free. But as she lay there, she heard a faint whisper in her ear. "We'll always be watching you, Jessica." She knew then that the ghosts were still with her, and that they would always be a part of her life. But she was no longer afraid. She knew that she had the power to face them, and to defeat them if she had to. And with that knowledge, she picked herself up, and walked out into the night, ready for whatever lay ahead. As Jessica stepped outside, she felt the cool night air on her face, and a sense of relief flooded over her. She was alive, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she had a chance at a normal life. She looked up at the stars, and realized that she had never appreciated them as much as she did now. They seemed to twinkle with a sense of hope, and she knew that she had to hold on to that feeling, no matter what happened next. As she walked down the street, she realized that she had no idea where she was going. But she didn't care. She was free, and that was all that mattered. And then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw a figure standing in the shadows. "Who's there?" she called out, her heart racing. The figure stepped forward, and Jessica saw that it was the woman from the haunted house on Maple Street. "I thought I got rid of you," Jessica said, trying to back away. The woman smiled, and Jessica saw that her teeth were sharp and pointed. "You can never get rid of us," she said. "We're always watching, always waiting." Jessica tried to run, but the woman was too fast. She felt the woman's icy grip on her arm, and knew that she was trapped. And then, with a sudden burst of courage, she spoke the words that had saved her before. The woman screamed, and then vanished in a burst of light. Jessica looked around, but there was no sign of the woman. She knew then that she had truly defeated the ghosts, and that she was finally free. And as she walked away, she realized that she was no longer afraid. She had faced her fears head-on, and had emerged victorious. She knew that there would be other challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, she was ready to face them. She was no longer the scared girl who had stumbled into the haunted house on Maple Street. She was Jessica, and she was ready for whatever lay ahead. As Jessica walked down the empty street, she couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. She knew that the ghosts were gone, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they were still watching her. She quickened her pace, hoping to reach her apartment as soon as possible. But as she turned the corner, she saw a figure standing in front of her building. It was the same man who had attacked her before. He looked different now, though. His clothes were torn, and his face was twisted into a grotesque mask of rage. Jessica knew that she had to act fast. She closed her eyes, and spoke the words that had saved her before. But this time, nothing happened. The man laughed, and lunged at her with his knife. Jessica tried to dodge, but she wasn't fast enough. The knife sliced into her arm, and she felt a searing pain shoot through her body. She stumbled back, clutching her arm, and tried to run. But the man was too fast. He caught up to her, and grabbed her by the hair. "You can't get rid of us that easily," he growled. Jessica felt tears streaming down her face. She knew then that she was going to die, and that there was nothing she could do to stop it. But then, out of nowhere, a group of people appeared. They were dressed in black, and carried weapons that Jessica had never seen before. They charged at the man, and Jessica watched in amazement as they fought him off. And then, with a final burst of energy, the man vanished in a burst of light. Jessica collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. She looked up at the strangers who had saved her, and realized that they were not just any ordinary people. They were demon hunters. They told her that they had been tracking the ghosts for years, and that they had finally found them in the haunted house on Maple Street. They had seen Jessica enter the house, and had followed her in, hoping to catch the ghosts once and for all. They had been too late to save the other people who had entered the house, but they had managed to save Jessica. As Jessica looked around at the group of demon hunters, she realized that she was not alone in her fight against the supernatural. She had allies, and she knew that they would always be there for her, no matter what. And with that knowledge, she picked herself up, and walked away, ready to face whatever lay ahead. She knew that the ghosts were gone, but she also knew that there would always be other demons to fight. But she was no longer afraid. She had faced her fears, and had emerged victorious. And as she walked away, she knew that she was no longer the scared girl who had stumbled into the haunted house on Maple Street. She was Jessica, demon hunter. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Jessica trained with the demon hunters, learning their ways and their secrets. She became an expert in the supernatural, and was soon respected by all those who knew her. But even with her newfound skills, she never forgot the terror of the haunted house on Maple Street. She knew that she had been lucky to survive, and that not everyone was so fortunate. So she made it her mission to help those who couldn't help themselves. She traveled the country, hunting down demons and ghosts, and freeing those who were trapped by their grasp. And everywhere she went, people knew her name. She was Jessica, the demon hunter who had defeated the ghosts of Maple Street. Years passed, and Jessica grew old. She knew that her time was running out, but she was content. She had lived a long and fulfilling life, and had done everything she had set out to do. And then, on her deathbed, something strange happened. She felt a cold wind blowing through her room, and she knew that the ghosts had returned. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She knew that she had lived a good life, and that she was ready to face whatever came next. And as the ghosts appeared before her, she spoke the words that had saved her before. And with a final burst of light, the ghosts vanished. Jessica smiled, and closed her eyes. She knew then that she had finally defeated the ghosts of Maple Street, once and for all. And as she drifted off into eternity, she knew that she had lived a life worth remembering. The news of Jessica's passing spread quickly among the demon hunting community, and many of her old friends and colleagues came to pay their respects. They held a funeral for her in a small church, and as the sun set on that day, they buried her in a nearby cemetery. As they lowered her coffin into the ground, one of her closest friends, a demon hunter named John, stepped forward to say a few words. Jessica was a warrior, he said, his voice echoing through the silent cemetery. She fought against the forces of darkness, and she never once backed down. She was a hero, and she will be missed. As the ceremony ended, the demon hunters dispersed, each one lost in their own thoughts and memories. But as they walked away, a strange wind began to blow. It was a cold, bitter wind, and it seemed to be coming from the direction of the cemetery. And then, as if by magic, the wind died down. The air grew still, and a hush fell over the cemetery. And then, from the darkness, a figure appeared. It was Jessica. She looked different now, somehow. She was younger, stronger, and more vibrant than she had been in years. The demon hunters watched in amazement as she walked towards them, a smile on her face. "Hello, my friends," she said. "I couldn't stay away for long." The demon hunters stared at her, unsure of what to say. "How is this possible?" John asked. "You were dead." Jessica shrugged. "I don't know," she said. "I just know that I'm back, and I'm ready to fight." The demon hunters exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of this strange turn of events. But then, as if on cue, the wind began to blow again. It was a gentle breeze now, warm and comforting. And as the wind blew, Jessica began to rise into the air. She floated up, higher and higher, until she was surrounded by a golden light. And then she was gone, vanished into the sky. The demon hunters stood there for a long time, watching the sky, lost in thought. And then, slowly, they began to walk away, each one lost in their own thoughts and memories. But even as they walked away, they knew that Jessica would always be with them, watching over them, and protecting them from the forces of darkness. For Jessica was not just a hero, she was a legend. And her legacy would live on forever.